And I'm back. So exactly what are the objectives of HR planning? Well, the very first thing is we want to ensure organizational effectiveness and strategic HRM. Effectiveness is defined as the extent to which goals have been met, and efficiency is the degree to which operations are done in an economical manner. So the dimensions of organizational effectiveness have to do with being productive organizationally, the financial contributions that are done, the service and quality rendered, and the organization's culture. Productivity, as you guys already know, is how the measure of the quantity and quality of the work that is being done, considering the cost of the resources used. And so basically it's determining the ratio of the inputs and outputs, which will indicate the value added by an organization. So one of the ways that we can measure this is the unit labor cost, which is basically calculated by dividing the average cost of a worker by their average levels of output. How can we improve organizational productivity? Well, we may have to restructure the company, or we may have to redesign the work done by our workforce. We may have to align the activities of HR, or we may need to outsource an analysis, for example, an audit, and require assistance from somebody external to the company. The organizational culture, remember, is one of the things that we covered in the previous slides, are basically the culture within the organization. What is the organization's values and beliefs? And is this strategy, is the culture of the company aligned with, first of all, the strategy that the company has created, and also are the employees on board and do they feel part of this culture? Remember that the company's culture will affect recruitment and also retention of the employees. That culture can actually help enhance performance or actually limit performance. And basically, culture is the climate of an organization. So what is our organizational plan? What do we want to achieve as an organization? And how do we integrate that into HR plan? How should the employees be aligned to achieve the organizational plan? So the first thing we need to do is actually take a look at the external environment. And for all of you who have already done business classes, this is the PESTEL analysis, the PEST analysis, or the SWOT, where we are looking at number of different factors that can affect our organization, and that way we can be able to determine opportunities that we can maximize, or threats that we need to minimize. So what kind of environmental changes can affect us in the HR department? Governmental influences, for example, a policy that they have just passed where now people cannot work more than 35 hours a week, let's say. Economic conditions, is the economy in a downturn? Is it booming, etc.? Geographic and competitive concerns, for example, issues that may be happening like climate change, or companies that are moving elsewhere, etc. And then the workforce composition. Now this has to do with, is the workforce aging? Are they becoming de-skilled, etc., etc.? And we may need to also have an inventory. We may need to take inventory about our employees when we are studying the environment. And of course, this would not be external, this would be internal, where we are trying to learn more about their KSAs. Their KSAs are basically an employee's knowledge, skills, and abilities. Knowledge is basically everything that they have learned through their education. Skills are the skills that they have acquired, also both through doing their job and also through their education. And abilities has to do with all of those abilities that they have. For example, we could take a look at them and compare them to soft skills versus hard skills. Hard skills are those technical skills that you have acquired, and soft skills are other kinds of skills that you may or may not acquire. They may come natural to you, like, for example, being a good communicator, being an active listener, leadership skills, etc. And basically, the inventory is basically being able to understand the skill set that our workforce has. And here we can, for example, look at different organizational capabilities, where we can analyze individual employees' demographics, age, where they come from, what did they study, et cetera, et cetera. Each individual employee's progress or career progress within the organization. And of course, each individual employee's job performance data. What do their managers think of them? Have they been growing and improving across the years? Are they continuously evolving? Are they working up the ladder? Are they not working up the ladder? What are the things that they have been told that they need to improve? Have they improved them or not, etc.? So, other objectives of HR planning. The first thing is that we as strategic HR managers need to ensure that we are using our human resources in the most optimal way. Then we also need to be able to forecast our future requirements and be able to estimate surpluses and lack of HR. And this I will actually talk about towards the end of class in more detail. We need to be able to cope with changes, market changes, technological changes, product changes, or government regulatory changes. To help in recruitment and selection. So remember that labor turnover is one of the most important aspects that we are going to look at when we are HR managers. And labor turnover is how quickly a person comes into the company, becomes part of the company, and then leaves. And of course, the most successful companies are those that have low labor turnover and are able to retain their talent. And of course, we can reduce labor turnover by effectively planning HR. So we are going to be able to understand the number of employees and understand the ones that need replacing in a set amount of time. And then, of course, we will also want to maintain output and productivity levels. How? Well, we are going to need to estimate absenteeism and illness, for example, and what kind of factors can increase or impact these ratios. Well, for example, in one of the companies that I worked at, I temped at many years ago, one of the issues that were coming up is that there was, in a specific construction site being handled by the company, the accidents had increased by 55%, and it was very high accident. And what was the factor that was contributing? Well, it turned out that the nurse that was on call had been replaced. The other nurse was somebody not important and nothing special, but suddenly that nurse had been replaced by a younger, very beautiful nurse. And actually, men in the construction site were actually hurting themselves on purpose with minor things. So I hammered my finger without meaning to, or I have a scrape here, just so that they could go see the very good-looking nurse. So these are the kind of things that as HR planners, as HR managers, we're going to have to be on the lookout for. Then it's also important for us to be able to work out an effective employment development program. And basically, this is done via training, via career advancement planning, and via education. There are companies that will actually pay for a worker to get a master's degree or to be reskilled, et cetera, because they want them to advance in their career. And that way they can retain talent and then maximize that person. Then, of course, we can also improve the skills and competencies of our existing staff so that they can perform their duties more effectively. So this is, for example, the HR department. Well, today we're going to have a workshop on how to be better communicators. And so we're going to be talking about this. These are the kind of objectives that have to do with number 7. And of course, establishing good industrial relations. This means not just within our organizations, but also with other external organizations that we will have to work with very closely. Like, for example, placement agencies, temping agencies, recruitment agencies, etc. Our industry, the unions, the work unions that we have inherent to our industry. And of course, one of the main objectives that we have is in order to reduce labor costs. The more that we can ensure that we have the right people placed at the right time in the right job, the more we can be cost effective. So in order for us to be able to properly reduce labor costs, there are various things that we can do. The first thing is that we need to accurately be able to capture and record an employee's time worked. One of the things that actually drives up labor costs is time theft. And time theft is basically when people are consistently showing up late and leave early, or they are inaccurately counting their lunch break. Instead of half an hour, they're taking 35 minutes. Or they're, for example, working on personal tasks during working hours. Well, I don't have work right now, so I think I'm going to check my Facebook page. This is what is known as time theft. Then also important for us to identify those employees that are being underutilized. They are not being developed to their full potential. So for example, what does this mean? Well, we've hired somebody that has a higher skill set, but we've hired them for a more simple job role. And so we are paying them higher wages for a job that is not specialized. This also affects an employee's morale, their motivation, and of course, ultimately will affect their productivity. Then it's also important for us to reduce overspending on labor. So for example, we can identify departments that are spending more on overtime, or that have a higher turnover, or that are taking more sick days. And by identifying these, we can ensure and plan so that we can forecast this into our HR costs. And then, of course, it's important for us to be able to properly manage overtime costs. Most overtime stems from poor planning. If, for example, we work at a manufacturing plant and we know that every year during the month of July, we get a great number of orders being placed, and we always have to end up paying our staff overtime. Well, instead of that, why don't we just ensure that we can recruit 2 or 3 more extra people to work during the month of July, so that instead of paying overtime, which is more expensive, we just pay temps, people who are temping for that month, in order to finish all of the work that is needed during that month of July, for example. And then, of course, it's also important for us to properly hire employees based on the amount of time that we need them. Perhaps we are hiring them full time when that work actually just entails a part-time contract. Or perhaps it's easier for us to outsource somebody for a very limited amount of time than to actually hire them as part of our full-time internal workforce. So this brings me to the end of our second part. I will be right back with the final part of our class.